so I'm Kat. I have a little thing on Facebook and on social media called Katika Creations. That card's up here, like I said, so feel free to take one if you want to check it out. I post like educational stuff on the internet, and I'm always happy to help out. So if you have questions about things after the convention, like why did this photo come out bad, or can you give me advice on how to make this better, or just help, then I don't know what I can do. In the last case, I might be like, is Timmy down the well? But I will try. I like to help people, and I like to educate people. So what am I going to teach you guys today? I'm going to talk about the basics of digital photography, like light, composition in the frame, how to reduce shape, tripods, remote triggers, etc. Point and shoot cameras versus what are called DSLR or mirrorless cameras. Finding good locations at conventions, because this can be really tricky. And there is sort of a secret or a knack to figuring out how to do that. And avoiding the dreaded convention center hallway mugshot photo. Or at least I dread them, because as soon as I start seeing those, I'm like, okay, next. Ooh, nice. But in those cases, when I see those photos, the only thing I care about is the costume. I don't care about the photo itself. Research and helping your cosplayers, interacting with your cosplayers, your kit, traveling light versus bringing everything, processing your photos, JPEGs versus RAWs. Do you need Lightroom? What is Lightroom? Should I buy more gear? And convention photos versus doing a photo shoot, and what's the difference? And should you not, whatever. So, who am I? My name is Kat, like I said. I have a bachelor's degree in studio art, which is like drawing, painting, photography, video, blah, blah, blah. And I have a master's degree in animation. I mostly focused on 2D stuff and things like that. But I also did work in film and live action, and so I have some experience with all of those different areas of film and photography. And so I like to think that in my approach to photography, and cosplay photography in particular, I bring what I would call an animator's eye and a filmmaker's eye to the process, because I think that the real beauty and the real joy of cosplay photography is found in storytelling. Because what cosplayers are really trying to do is bring to life characters that don't exist in reality. Even cosplayers that are cosplaying like live action characters, those characters still aren't real. They have an actor who dresses up as them, but they're not real. And so the point is that when you stage photos and create like these little vignettes and put things together, if you can create moments in time and capture like a visual illustration, that is so much more powerful than just taking a snapshot. And if you have images like that that really sort of speak to people, you will get even someone who doesn't care about cosplay or nerd culture or photos to go, wow, what's going on in this picture? Who's that? You know, you might even get them going, what's that from? Can I watch that show? You know, or can I see more of your photos? What's the story? And you'll be like, well, there's not really a story, I just thought it looked cool. But, you know, or you might tell them there is a story and here are the 5 box sets. You can watch them with me on our date. And then after that, we're going to get married. But anyway, so cons I have personal experience with regarding the layout, so feel free to ask me about these if you would like, are Fanime, which is in Northern California, Anime Expo, both the old and the new, because it used to be in Anaheim, so the Anaheim Convention Center, although I don't know if it's been renovated. And the new Anime Expo, which is in the Los Angeles Convention Center. San Diego Comic-Con, haven't been in a long time, but I went several times, so I know the score. Obviously San Japan, Anime Weekend Atlanta, and I've been to Onicon once. Once was enough.
Once is enough.
Yeah. No, it's okay, I talk smack, but it rained really bad, like flooding rain when I was at Onicon, and that made it less than optimal. I took all my photos in the garage in the basement that weekend. It was not fun. Okay, so Photo 101, more like photo $sign. To take nice photos, you have to spend a lot of money, right? Well, it helps. But at a certain point, your image quality just won't improve if you don't get interchangeable lenses and a larger sensor. So if you're wondering, like, man, I'm paying money for these nice cameras and things, like, those point and shoots where they go, it has a, 50 gazillion megapixels, but my photos still look bad. Why? It doesn't look like those shiny, pretty pictures on the internet. How come? That's because the sensor isn't getting any bigger. The sensor is a part of the digital camera that is, without getting like super technical, it is a piece inside that comes in certain sizes, and in your cheaper, more consumer grade cameras, they are all like about, I don't know, yay big or something, let's say for example purposes. And then once you go into professional cameras, then they're like yay big. This is not necessarily to scale, just sort of like compare this to this. And so any photo taken, no matter, like even if the professional camera is like 3 megapixels, it's still gonna have better photos on a sensor this big than the photos with 500 megapixels on a sensor like this. Just purely because of the way that the system works. So always find out what's the sensor size in the camera versus what the megapixels are. But also there's other ways you can do research. There are many websites that let you compare what the images are going to look like before you buy a camera. It's a process, and it takes a while to figure out which one you want. But those are the 2 key factors limiting the less expensive cameras. So, and this is what this panel is mostly about, you can still improve the quality of your images with small investments of time and thought and maybe a little money without dropping like $700 or $1,000 on a new camera. So, how do cameras work? They record light. If there's not enough light, no picture. So simple rule, if your picture is really bad, it's probably too dark for whatever camera you have. Cheap or consumer grade cameras usually don't do well in low light compared to professional cameras. Convention centers and hotels are almost always low light situations. So it's like an instant recipe for your photos to be blurry, out of focus, super grainy, etc. So, like, what do? Like, for example, this is a photo I took with my really good camera, but still, it got all sort of fuzzy around the edges and weird. My photos are blurry, but the room was super bright. Your hands might be shaking. Are your elbows out like this, like you want to take off? This is called chicken winging, don't do it. Be careful. What you should do is hold your camera like a precious baby. You have one hand like this, and you put the other hand underneath the camera. Cradle it, and then pull your elbows into your body to stabilize yourself. Like become a human tripod, so your upper part of your body is all very tight and in, like this, and you get that photographer's shoulder hunch, and then put your legs shoulder width apart or something like that, and you do this. Bring it up to your eye level, even if you don't have a viewfinder. It's generally better than like holding the camera out. This is always a recipe for disaster, anything like that, because your arms will start to shake. Bring it as close to your center as you can, because it will be more stable. So, and this is more about how to hold a camera. Let's see if there's anything in this that I didn't just mention. Oh, controlling your breathing. Taking photos is like sniping if anybody plays games or was in the military or has an unsavory past that they can never forget and will not tell us about, and they cry in the shower sometimes. But so, yeah, that went to a weird place. But control your breathing. So when you are taking shots, you want to just breathe normally. Remember to breathe. That's important. You're learning real life lessons here in this panel. But what you should do is, before you take your shot, breathe in, hold it, take the shot, breathe out. That will reduce shake. And also you can lean against walls and other objects, other people. Probably not the best, but you can do it, if there's someone you know who's very dependable. Ask first. That's a good idea. Get down on your knees, put one leg up and put your elbow on your knee. You can take like a gardening mat with you to the convention if you want to like do hardcore photography. That's the kind of cheap gear that they have, like those little mats that like have a handle and it's about like yay big, and it's for going out into the yard and like pulling out weeds. It's tiny, it's light. You can just sort of hook it onto your belt or attach it to your con bag or whatever, and then just whip it out and just kneel down wherever. And you don't need it, but it would make your life a little more comfortable. You will not have bruised knees by the end of the day. You can also even try knee pads if you're feeling really, really nerdy and you don't care about how terrible you you can put knee pads like under your outfit, or cosplay someone who wears knee pads. That's the ultimate. The ultimate in photographer comfort. So, tripods. It's still blurry. You might need a tripod. There are lightweight tripods you can get. They are not even necessarily super expensive. And they're not necessarily terribly bad. There are also such a thing called a monopod, which is basically just one like long stick. And there's various different types of them. I would say it's a very useful investment if you are super into photography. And if you have even a moderately good camera, it will be a fantastic, useful thing for you if you want to take photos like late at night. And I will get more into some of that later. So, it's still blurry even after the tripod, and you held your breath for like 5 million years and you're still alive somehow, but you know, you did all the things. You might need a remote trigger because you might be shaking the camera with your hand when you push the button. There are remote triggers that look like that. There are also like apps on your phone if your camera is that fancy. And there are also like little tiny remotes that are separate from your camera where you like push a button and it goes click, like via Bluetooth or whatever, but it depends on your individual device. But yeah, those are super handy. What is really nice about some of the remote triggers, especially with older cameras, is you can use them to force the camera to stay. Well, this is with more advanced cameras, but you can force the lens to stay open for an unnaturally long time. And this will allow you to take long exposures. For example, have you ever seen one of those nighttime photos where like the lights are all streaks? That's how that's done. You have to be able to put the camera on a tripod somewhere or on a stable surface, and then just allow things to go. Still blurry? Jesus, what are you trying to take pictures of? You might just need more light. It might be like super dark. I'll get back to this a little later, but it might just be that you want the impossible, but we're going to try to make the impossible possible. Point and shoot versus DSLR. So, the little red guy is what you would think of as a point and shoot. DSLR is usually these big, bulky animals. Point and shoots, they're great because they are fast, cheap, easy to carry around. And I will say that I'll treat the point and shoot kind of interchangeable with like a cell phone camera, except for the fact that point and shoot, if it's any good, will be a little bit faster than using your cell phone camera probably, because the cell phone usually has to, unlock, open up. At least in my experience, because my cell phone isn't super great, since it's not a dedicated device for the purpose of taking photos, it tends to be a little derpy about it. So, but picture quality is not always great in a point and shoot camera or in a cell phone. Although with cell phones you can buy little additional lenses. I have never done this, so I can't vouch for it, and I don't know how useful it is. They're not super expensive, so you may want to blow a little money and test it out, see if it's any good. I know that actual, for real, realsies filmmakers do this and then film stuff using cell phones. I don't know how, but they do. So give it a try. But the downside of these things is that they often do not have a viewfinder. I don't think I've seen a point and shoot with a viewfinder, and in case anyone does everyone know what a viewfinder is on the camera? Raise your hand if you do not. Okay. The viewfinder is the little sticky outy thing on the top of the camera where you stick your eye up to it so you can see what you're taking a picture of. And when I say a camera that doesn't have a viewfinder, I mean that the only option you have for looking at what you want to take a picture of is a screen that's lit up. And the reason that is important is that the LCD screens on cameras, one, eat batteries like a motherfucker, pardon me, and two, because out in the sunshine, it gets really hard to see what's on the LCD screen sometimes, and three, because it's just generally easier to like block everything out and just to put your eye up to the thing and hold it close to your face, stabilize it when you're looking through the viewfinder. So it's just generally better in those regards. But other than that, viewfinder's the screen, the LCD screen is fine. But yeah. So DSLR, what? What the heck are those? What does that even mean? A digital camera combining the optics and mechanisms of a single lens reflex camera with a digital imaging sensor. What? A mirror and prism system that allows the photographer to view through the lens and see exactly what will be captured, contrary to viewfinder cameras where the image could be significantly different from what will be captured on film. Oh, so they just mean not this? They could have just said that. No, they mean, you ever seen those old-timey cameras where like the guy has to throw an entire like black cloth over his head? They basically just mean not those, and not those cameras where you have to stand still for like 12 minutes in order to take a picture. That's what DSLR means, not those. So, DSLRs, pretty pictures, sharp, good in low light, expensive. Manual mode can be hard to master, and learning to take proper advantage of manual mode takes a while. I will freely admit that I have not shot in manual mode in several years simply because when I go to conventions, I just don't have time. And so I have let my skills go to pot a little bit just because I haven't had time to shoot. I know how to do all of it, but the auto mode is so good on my camera that it's like, okay, this is good enough, I can fix it in post. But manual mode is definitely better and more rewarding. You feel like, man, I'm so smart. I was able to adjust all these things that the computer can do. But the other thing with DSLRs is that they are heavy. They are kind of big, and you will be tempted to carry extra lenses around, and then it will get even heavier. Like, that is a DSLR with a telephoto lens, so you can see how enormous that is. Does anyone have like a super huge lens and camera with them? Can they lift it up to show the rest of the class? No? Okay. So, now this is actually the camera that I have. This is the Sony Alpha 6000. So, mirrorless. They are newfangled digital cameras that remove all the mirror hocus pocus that DSLRs use. The reason that that's no longer needed, just to keep it very short, but that is because in olden days of yore, when film was actually involved in the camera process, you had to use mirrors to bounce the light here and there and everywhere in order to invoke the black magic that would result in an image hitting the film and not like overexposing it. Like basically the light comes in and then you need to use the mirror to get the picture to go on the film and then also simultaneously into the viewfinder so you can see what you're shooting and also have the exact same image on the film. But it's like, well, now it's digital, so we don't need it anymore. So let's take the mirror out. And wow, it's so much lighter now. We don't need all that heavy stuff. Huh, and it's smaller. Yay! So, Canon just released a new one. I'm so mad that I didn't wait for that, but oh well, I have my Sony. So it is slightly less expensive than your typical DSLR, and I'm sure that they will continue to get less and less expensive as time goes on, so you may want to wait it out a little bit and see what happens in the market as it gets saturated with these, as the technology evolves. Basics. Now we're going to talk about composition. This is the fun stuff. I could teach an entire class on just this. The quick and dirty of it is figure out what kind of photos you want to take, and then study those photos and copy them. Maybe not, like you could copy them literally, or you could copy them like just in sort of concept. Like you could say, man, I really like this cosplay photo where like these three guys are over here and then there's this one person over on this side. I'm gonna try to do something like that. And just by doing these things, it's really good practice, and you learn so much by attempting to replicate something that you like. because you go, oh, I think I know the reason I like this now. And then eventually, soon, you will fly on your own, little brave eagle. But generally speaking, look at classical paintings and films and you'll learn classical composition. Since cosplayers are recreating characters from TV and movies, I mostly like to create two types of photos. Cinematic, or what I call art book photos. Because characters that are from illustrated works like manga or comic books, they'll often have like cover illustrations or advertisement illustrations where it's like, you know, two dudes in front of a bright red background, or like people on a checkerboard pattern background flying through space with like rose petals everywhere. And those kind of photos are obviously interesting and difficult to achieve in the real world. But if you can create an interesting background somehow, like let's say you find a hotel and it's like, wow, there's a huge red wall here. Let me get these characters that have good color coordinated outfits and put them in front of this wall and arrange it nicely, it will look good. Or let's say you find a hallway that has checkered floors, then you can say, let's line people up in here and let's get some interesting shots where you can see the perspective of those checkered floor tiles. And if you do it right and position yourself and the camera correctly, you will get some interesting looking shots. So here's some examples of like cinematic. Now see, this one is interesting because it's taken inside of a mall. That is a storefront that looks like the outside of a building. And I said, okay guys, I want you to stand in front of this and, okay, you position yourself here and you get behind him, get behind Captain America and pretend that you are, you know, about to shoot him and betray him. And I'm gonna get here on this other side and I'm gonna do this racked focus effect like it's a film still, you know, and the camera has just, you know, panned up to show the betrayal as it's happening. And these are more what I would call the art book photos, where it's just a plain white background, but the characters are very colorful, and they are arranged in an interesting way. Or the background is colorful, but in a geometric, orderly fashion. And there's a painting behind them, but it's not too busy, so it doesn't distract from the character design. And so placing them in this way made it sort of look like a purposeful, you know. This is another example. This is the same mall with the same like weird interior storefronts that look like a street. But I really like that red-yellow divide. So, good framing, the rule of threes. As long as your main points of focus are on these lines, with the most important parts being at the intersection of the lines, you can avoid bad framing. So when you are composing a shot in the camera, always just look at and actually some cameras will even have a mode where you can push a button and just look through your camera and see if you have it, and it will insert various grid lines to help you. And then you can be like, oh, are things lining up with the grid, or am I like way out of bounds? But as you can see in these photos, get my laser pointer out. As you can see, the important things in this photo are, you know, his eyes are right here on this intersection. And then here's the gun at this intersection. And his hand is like right about there. I can't see it from this distance, but I assume that's his hand. It's like fleshy. And then here you have this face at this intersection. Her head is a little bit down, but I believe the other gentleman's head is right there. And then I cannot see this one from here, so I can't tell you what's good about that one. But there's people, and they're lined up at the grid. But you get the idea. The other two examples I can see, but that one I can't. I'm blind. Which is not, not really blind. But that's not useful for a photographer. No, but as you can see, the way you arrange your cosplayers can be intensely important. And oftentimes you end up doing like the school photographer thing where you're like, can you guys move a little bit to the left? No, the other left, no, slightly, yeah, up, no, back. Can you put your hand on his shoulder? No, his other shoulder. Yeah, and it gets a little tedious sometimes, and sometimes some cosplayers are not down for it because they're just like, I just want to go, dude. But a lot of the times they really, really want those good photos, and they will appreciate the time and the effort you put into making them look good, and they will really like the results that you show them. So, center frame composition is another option if you don't want to do the rule of threes type of thing. So as you can see in these two photos, there is that ape man right there in the center of the frame, and he is going to bring his fist down. But even as a still photo, that is just dynamic and interesting. You're like, man, what's about to happen? Like, some shit is about to go down here. And even though there is that big hunk of cattle skull, I think, or horse skull, that's like pointing the eye sort of off the screen a little bit, you're still totally drawn in towards this dark black mass in the center of the photo. And then of course there is that bottom picture where everybody is framed in the sort of triangular tent. And then you're drawn into the photo by the kid's extended arm that is sticking out to one side. And then you just circle around in the center with the arms and legs of the adult, the, I don't know, camp counselor or whoever that guy is, the guy with the big hat. Yeah, that fellow. But the point is that your eye is drawn into this center part of the screen, and you just circle around and around, and that keeps your attention where you want it, because you do not want your viewer to be looking at the corners or looking at that bed instead of looking where you want them to look. Because photography and film is kind of like a fun game of mind control. You want to grab your viewer and be like, no, you don't have free will, I'm going to tell you where you need to look. And I'm going to do that with color and light, and I'm going to make you do what I want. So here are some other compositions where you have 3 different people in the pictures, or 3 objects in the frame, in the case of that airplane. No, the airplane is also a person. He's been in a lot of films. No. But for example, what is very interesting about one of these is, that I want to point out is, where is my other pointer? I can't see it. There we go. If you look at this one right here, I love this composition because this fellow is looking sort of like out this way, away from his friends, but this guy is looking right here, and this guy is looking at him. This instantly creates a connection between these 2 individuals. This is a relationship happening in the image. So you do not need any context, you don't need to know what's going on, and this is the kind of thing that you can build a story with in a cosplay photo. And so obviously it helps if you know what they are cosplaying, but even if you don't, you can ask, just say if you have like 2 or 3 characters that are obviously like hanging out together, you can say, I don't really know what it is that you guys are dressed as, but I think you look cool. Is there any relationship between any of these characters? Are you guys friends or enemies or, college roommates? Do you owe each other money? Ask them to talk about it, because cosplayers love their characters and they will be delighted to tell you a little bit about their characters. And from like a 5-minute conversation, you will be able to compose much, much better photos. And personally, I think that quality way outstrips quantity. Because when you take a bazillion photos that all just kind of look the same, one, you have to process all of those, and that's a pain in the butt. And I already take way too many photos, even good ones, and I'm like, I have such a backlog. Never gonna get these done. So this is actually from film and animation and comics, but these are known as the 22 panels that always work. So if you're just going, I have no idea what to do with this cosplayer, they're terrible at posing, but I just really want to take a picture of this, or this area is bad, there's no interesting background. And you can totally find this reference on the internet. This is like in every animator's basic, they give this to us. Like in the bad photocopies. But these are your emergency go-tos when nothing else will make the photo interesting. So as you can see, like you can get an extreme close-up where there is just sort of something plain or one color right behind in that little sliver behind the face. You can get an even more extreme close-up if they have, for example, striking eyes or striking makeup. Or maybe their hair is very interesting. Like I have that photo that was playing in the slideshow earlier of Marita from Brave. And that girl had the most amazing wig, and she had like one curly cue of red hair that was just like right here. And so it's not an extreme close-up, but it's pretty tight on her. And I was just focused, I just wanted to show just that one little thing that was there because it was so beautiful. I wouldn't use the very tight shot of the back of head, part of head that they have there. I think that probably doesn't translate super well into photography, just because I think it's a little too tight. If you back out of that and get a little further away, that would be fine. Basically just do an over-the-shoulder shot, as they would call it in film. Get two cosplayers to pretend they're talking to each other and stand behind one of them and then stand behind the other one and take a couple of pictures and just tell them, pretend you're talking. Get a profile shot of the same thing, pretend you're talking, pretend you're fighting, pretend you're mad at each other. Always try to give cosplayers prompts that make them laugh. It is a really good way of breaking the ice, and it's a good way of making them relax and feel better about sort of the photo and themselves, because some people do get nervous when they're getting their photo taken. So, you know, say silly things, you know, don't try too hard, but just say things, you know, like, imagine that they owe you money, or, you know, they left the toilet seat up again, you know, things that you know are really ridiculous and have nothing to do with the characters, but are just like kind of silly real life things. Because if they love those characters, then they have thought about those things a million times. Like, oh man, I bet they have been fighting about who bought the Doritos or didn't buy milk, you know, whatever. These are the things that people who like to cosplay get. As a cosplayer, I can confirm. Anyway, and this is actually something that I'm going to talk about again as I get later into the panel and talk about how to motivate cosplayers and get them to act, basically, because that's essentially what this is directing. So the dark foreground and light background, you can get that effect if you have like a shadowed area somewhere and then an area very nearby where there is not shadow, like it's outdoors. Like for example, here we have the grotto, you know, that an area under the bridge, you know, that connects the two sides of the convention center. And you could easily place one person in light and one person in shadow there. And the end result would be, if you place yourself correctly, this kind of effect. Ignore the car thing unless you really want to take pictures of cars. But all black, if someone is wearing a very dark outfit, you can definitely find a dark background, but hopefully a well-lit dark background, because taking pictures of people in dark outfits on dark background is disastrous if it's also a dark place. You won't be happy with the results, so avoid that. But, I will cover this later, but I will just say that in a pinch, you can bring in what I call opportunity lighting. Get somebody with their cell phone flashlight to stand out of frame and just shine that mother in their face. And just get a little bit of extra light tossed onto the person, because all you need to illuminate usually is the face and maybe like a white collar or whatever is colorful, like right here at the top, because usually if someone is wearing a costume that's like a suit or something, the color is all like right here. Anyway, you can also, a very useful technique that I've seen other people do, it's super simple and really effective to the point of ridiculousness, is having a big object in the foreground and the character in the background. And the way you do this is, like, let's say somebody has a weapon or like a bow and arrow, And so what you do is you say, okay, I want you to act like you've just shot an arrow, and then they give you their arrow prop, and then you hold it in your hand in such a way that it looks like it's sort of come through the camera and like a bit of it is sticking into the shot. And so you get this effect that you are of the perspective of the thing that they have shot. And you can do this with various other weapons. You can have them like stab at you with a sword or whatever it is that they have, or shove their fist into you, etc. Okay, that sounds really weird out of context. Thankfully, nobody was walking in just at that moment. If you did, this is the plus 18 panel. No. Okay, so moving on. There are some others here that are not as great, but I'm going to focus in order to move on from this a little faster. The small figure, big background, what I would say is the best for that in terms of a cosplay setup would be if you can get a very austere background, because the biggest problem I find in most cosplay shots that I see is when the background is too busy. If there's lots of stuff like people in the background or, hand railings, windows, stuff, it's too busy, the eye gets distracted and you don't know where to look and you don't really notice that little figure that's standing there or even the big figure that's standing there. Now, in certain cases that might be okay. If you want to create visual confusion or you want to draw the eye in a certain way, I have a photo, I think it's in here somewhere, and I'll point it out to you when we get there, where I went into the stairwells here and took a photo from one level by shooting up through the railings at a cosplayer because I wanted to frame them in all the different layers of the stairs as they were crisscrossing and intersecting. But in that case, it is different because they were literally framed by this device. So all of those things were leading to them rather than just sort of haphazardly going in all directions. Down shot with a cast shadow would be a very cool shot, but a lot of cosplayers might not like that because it may make them look heavier than they would like. Or it might show off some part of their cosplay that they would not like to be recorded for posterity, depending. They might not have seen what it looks like from above. But if you can get up high, give it a try. It's cool. A silhouette shot, like up against a window with like the sunset behind them, that can be very, very cool. Or up on a roof, that is also fun. And then, reflection shots are very, very fun. If there is a pool of water or a highly polished floor, try to get both the cosplayer and their reflection in the shot together without anything else that's too distracting. I don't have that photo in here because it's too new. I didn't update this PowerPoint with it. But I did get a really nice garage shot of, during that flooded Onicon experience, a cosplayer that had this very black and white outfit, and they were just like perfectly reflected in this huge puddle of water underneath them. I would say avoid the frame option that they show here. Like, you could do it, but it would not look very good in photography because the frame of a window pane like that would probably break up your image a little too much and it would create visual confusion. If you get the cosplayer closer to the window, like they're right up there against the window and looking out soulfully, that will work. Do the Shinji Ikari or the Rei Ayanami, I forget who is it stands up against the window and looks out sadly. But anyway, and then the rest of these don't really apply. And then this is just another set of examples of the same sort of concept, different version. Again, if you search for Bollywood 22 panels that always work, you will find these reference images on Google Image Search and you can stare at them to your heart's content. So, location, location, location. How do you find good location? Okay, so we've all taken this photo at some point in our lives, right? Or like this photo, we've all taken this photo. That's me, by the way, in the red gloves in the center with the bald cap. Or this photo. This one's like the least bad out of all of these so far, although it's still not great, but the only reason I think it's not terrible is because the character comes from like a dystopian future technological society, so it's like, okay, I guess, yeah, they probably have architecture like this somewhere. This one also is not great. But so, even taking bad photos with good cameras will not save them. Some of those aren't even that bad, but they could be a lot better. So how do we make them better? So if you need to take a mirror selfie or a room selfie and you want it to not look really embarrassing or just want it to look sort of decent, because you really just want to show off the costume, right? Like you want to have a record of, look at how awesome I looked right before I left my room and went out to the convention, because I know later I'm going to be sweaty and not so beautiful as I am right this second when everything is perfect. If you have 10 seconds to spare, either offer to snap a few photos of your friend's cosplay, because then you will earn cosplay karma, and then they will do the same in the future. You may have to remind them that they owe you, but you know. But the other things that one can do is close the door, move the bags, try to get a clean, blank background behind you so that people are not distracted by the mess. Because even just like a well-made bed behind you is still going to be kind of a distraction. Like I would say that a blank closed door is preferable than the corner of the bed. These photos are rarely good pictures, but they serve a purpose. You want to document something. So this is not a great photo by any means. I took it not last night, but that was for another convention. I took it with my cell phone at a convention. But the background behind me isn't cluttered, and I'm very well lit because there was a light like directly above me. It was awesome. And I lifted my head so that the overhead light wouldn't cast scary shadows on my face, but it was really nice because it was like a beauty light, as they would use in a like glamour photo shoot. But it shows off the outfit very nicely. You can see everything clearly, the colors are good, etc. So, group snapshots. Obviously okay if you just want to record who was there and have a memento. You're like, yay, all my friends are here, we look awesome, this was fun, wee! Or you're in the dealer's hall and you just don't have a choice because you can't always be like, yes, photo shoot, moments in time. But it's not very thrilling, right? Like when you see those photos where it's just like, oh, they look awesome, but they're just all sort of standing there and it's boring. You're like, man, I wish that they had a chance to like do something cool. So just a few feet away, I took this photo instead of that other photo. So like this, and then this. By literally turning around, that was the difference. And then this photo. So look around you. You may be surprised what you will find. That just by going to like a different corner of the exact same room, or like looking at the wall that is like 5 feet to your left, you will find a 500 times more interesting and more flattering photo more flattering photo of your cosplayers just because it's not this photo. Like they all look great in this, but they definitely look more badass here. And they definitely look a lot funnier and cuter here. So sometimes you just need to move to a different position relative to the cosplayers. So this isn't a bad photo. This was just outside of a convention. This is Anime Week in Atlanta. And you can see like there's a big crowd of cosplayers in the background, which isn't really a problem because like Spider-Man, Deadpool, you can imagine they're in New York, so maybe Central Park or whatever. So having cosplayers around, or even just like people, teenagers or whatever, would make sense. It's not weird. But this is a way more dynamic and interesting photo of them because it feels more like this might actually be happening in a city park somewhere. The crowd in the back is less noticeable because you don't see the defined borders of them, like that, oh, here is a little cluster of people and then there's nobody else around. You could, in theory, just sort of glance at that and think that, oh, those people over there are just people on the street doing stuff, normal people things, not anime con things. And the focus in this picture is not the big zoomed out thing where you're not sure where to look, but it is on the relationship between Spider-Man and Deadpool. And the various lines of action here are directing our eyes through the frame to look at the two of them and how they relate to each other. And for the laser pointer. So for example, Deadpool is leaning in this way, and that brings your eye up towards Spider-Man, and then his turned head is going this way, but his arm and head connect in one, and his elbow is a bit in, and so that brings your eye down, but his feet are pointing towards Deadpool. So your eye goes whoop, and you go in a loop. And this is a classical art technique that makes your eye go wee, and you just keep looking at it. And also the katana going off like this gives your eye an entry point into the image. So you go whoop, and then wee. That's a technical term, by the way. Whee! So I've got this photo, and this is obviously right here with those statues. And is anyone here familiar with Resident Evil at all? Their games. Okay, so not very many of you, so I'll explain like as briefly as possible. Long story short, Resident Evil is a video game. It is an oppressive horror atmosphere, like zombies and like trying to escape from creepy mansions where there's lots of weird puzzles, and you find like strange herbs and things to heal yourself with. And they will be in odd locations, often on statues that you have to like push around in order to unlock hidden doors, etc. So when I saw the statues, I was like, hey, Jill, she's from Resident Evil, could we go take some pictures with the statues, and can we put your green herb on one of the statues and make it look like you are about to go do a puzzle or get an herb? And she was like, that sounds awesome, yes, can we do that? And I said, of course, yes, let's go. I wouldn't have asked you if I didn't want to. So this one is not a bad photo of it, but it doesn't really capture all of that I just explained, the spirit of it. You can tell that she's in a larger space, that this is not a small room. I did manage to cut out all the other statues, but it's not enough to make you feel like this is an oppressive atmosphere in a tiny little dimly lit room that's all creepy. Now this is a lot more creepy. And I am employing what is called a Dutch angle here. And in filmmaking, the Dutch angle just basically means that they tilt the camera on its side in order to make the audience feel uncomfortable. But so in this case, by doing this, I create the sense that the room is much smaller than it is, because you can't really see where the ceiling is. You can't see the ceiling in the other one either, but you can clearly see that it's definitely not there. Here, it's like it might be just out of frame. You don't know. You can't really tell because it just sort of gets dark there. And your eye isn't going there anyway, because you're really looking at this sort of line of Jill, because she's the palest thing on the screen. And then you're looking straight across her arm at this herb and going, the heck? Why is there a plant on the statue? I don't understand. And just to show you what I mean, this is the type of camera angle you would get in the game, and that is the type of statue, and you can sort of barely see Jill back there. She's that little blurry grayish figure behind it, in front of those doors. And obviously, if I had had the choice, I would have loved to get on an extreme camera angle and like climb up on some stairs or something and shoot from above, but I did not have that option, so I couldn't. This is another similar type of shot from the games that shows you the type of thing that I wanted to capture. Obviously, this is not indoors, but you make do. So, the Convention Center mugshot. This one that I took is better than most because she's posing in an in-character way, and I've pulled her out of traffic so there's nobody behind her. And the background is sort of similar to the source material, so she doesn't look wildly out of place. Like it's not a samurai in the middle of techno wonderland, or Jon Snow. It's not like Jon Snow in downtown New York. But anyway, I would personally advise resist the urge to take these, even if it's your favorite character. Like, unless you just absolutely love it, then just take a selfie with them, have fun. But if you're at all serious about photography and you want to just get like choice images because you want to curate your collection, photos always look better if you take 20 seconds to find a background that looks better behind them, or a setting that suits them somehow. Even if by suiting them it means that it's totally blank and it's just a color. See, like this, I think is a terrible photo of this guy. I love this character, and so I took this mugshot of him, and afterwards I was just like, oh, I'm not gonna post this anywhere, it's awful. But he was super cute, and I was so happy to see him, but, and this is like a candid shot of these two when they were hanging out. Their costumes are fantastic, they're super on point. But the photos were so much better once I actually got them out to something that was appropriate for them. Like, even this could have been appropriate for them if they were posing and if I had moved myself into the correct sort of camera angles. So sometimes a convention has multiple hotels. This is my advice for finding the much valued, lauded, secret locations. Each hotel typically has different decor. These are all from the same con, but different hotels, the photos that I'm about to show you guys. This is a convention in Northern California, but so this picture of Zelda in front of this like tapestry, that's a hotel lobby, like right in front of the front desk. Same hotel, obviously the lobby. This is a different part of that same hotel, but they have like a waiting area, and a big piano there, obviously. This is a same convention, totally different hotel, totally different aesthetic, very modern. And so there's like 3 Tony Starks hanging out and drinking, and I was like, you guys want to come to the internet cafe and take a bunch of pictures? It was super dark there, so the photos were awful, but it was still fun. This is the same, another hotel, same convention. So good idea won't work. In this case, this photo here, I thought something sort of technological, but also kind of royal. These elevators sort of look techno, but not super modern, not super old. They're gold, so Princess Bubblegum might look cool in front of them, but there's too many conflicting lines behind her, and her design is too simple in contrast, so it just doesn't gel in my opinion. So it might have worked better if I'd placed her in the center of one of those doors or had her interacting with the elevator in some way, like maybe she's getting into the elevator or coming out of the elevator, or if there had been another character from her series there for her to interact with. So it would be not her posing, but her being in the setting, like she's in this building for some reason. But as it is, it's sort of not as effective as I had wanted. I just wanted a picture of her because I thought she was cute. Now, this is more effective because this is a deliberate choice, and the background, while abstract and not meaningful in any way, is just framing the characters and framing the illustration concept. So, location scouting. The first thing I like to do at a new con when I don't know the area is to familiarize myself with the layout and explore the area a little bit if I have time, and figure out where the good spots are for photo shoots. Sometimes it's really weird places, loading docks, stairwells, hallways in like the back of places, and not every character needs a beautiful background. Sometimes you want it to be grungy or ugly. Like for example here, this is like the loading dock behind that same convention center. These characters are mercenaries. They are always in their video game fighting in loading docks and like construction sites, and there was a construction site, so I was like, hey guys, let's go over here where there's these bright blue and red, shipping crates, like your team colors, let's take pictures. And then this lady was dressed up as a soldier, and so I said, can we go to, and these are the stairwells here of the Hyatt Hotel, which are super hot, but they are fantastic murder-death stairs. If you go down deep enough, you will eventually find like a really, really tiny set of stairs there that are very dimly lit and very creepy. And they are really cool. But they don't air condition in there, so it's not fun. But so at any rate, so these are some shots of her that I took in these. And then here's a better shot of these two Sailor Moon cosplayers where I posed them and took them outside to that same park area. And this is obviously like an illustration type of photo because these two characters would not pose together in reality. So hold on to your butts because it's time for directing your models and composing your shots. So, in my opinion, not a very good photo, but I took it on purpose in order to illustrate the difference. So there's this. Now, it's not terrible, but the poses that all the characters are doing are good. And the background isn't even that bad for what they're cosplaying. It fits them. But it could be better. The composition is boring. There's no drama going on here. It's just kind of like, I stood here like a robot, I snapped the picture, I am done, goodbye. Now, this is way more interesting, right? And this is just by moving to a different position. So now we are at the blunt end. We're going to be hit by that rocket launcher, and that red soldier is trying to get that medic, and that scout is going to defend him to the bitter end. And, you know, again, and see, even here, even though there are things, like extraneous things in the real world behind them, like there's that orange cone at his elbow, and there is that little bit of a sign poking into the top. You could Photoshop those things out in post if you wanted to, but I did not feel that it was necessary in this case, although I could have maybe framed it a tiny bit better. I could have told the medic, hey, could you lift your elbows slightly so that we don't create a tangent? Because then I could have gotten them to cover that little white sign that's right above their fingers with their whole hand. And then there wouldn't be something there. Tangent is when there is something in the background that is either overlapping with or physically connecting to a body part of your subject. And that's what happens sometimes when it looks like you have a hole growing out of somebody's neck or head or whatever. Things like that. So in this case, obviously it doesn't look like that per se, but you could argue that it looks like that little piece of white sign is growing out of the finger, or that orange pipe is growing out of the elbow. And it would look nicer if there was a tiny bit of separation there so that you could clearly see that that is in the background and not, you know, right mushed up against them. And so this is also more interesting because they are not perfectly centered, they are slightly at an angle, and you can see their facial expression, and you can see sort of the way that they are positioned. And also, I mean, these guys are not necessarily the most incredible cosplayers ever. I'm not saying that they're bad, just that, like, you know, they're wearing sneakers and, you know, they're just sort of hanging out, they're having fun. But the point is that even in those cases, you can take really cool photos of people, just because if you put some thought into it and figure out how to work with them. So like not everybody has to be in like the super elaborate ball gown with like 500 LED lights and 3 pairs of wings and, you know, all that craziness. So together those photos tell a little story. The characters are interacting even though they aren't moving. So now back to this topic from earlier. Knowing your characters. If you don't know them, ask questions. If you can guess a bit, sometimes you can guess. Is your character a bit nerdy? How about pretending to read this book while your friend pouts because you aren't paying attention to them? Be aware of common cliches and tropes in anime, manga, and games. You can use them to your advantage. Like, for example, anime characters, you know, 99% of the time, if there is a pretty boy who wears glasses, he's the nerd. If there is an anime character with red hair, they're going to be the fiery tempered one. Like, it's not always true, but you can generally guess that that's going to be the case, especially if it's something like a shonen series or a sports anime. Read up on new shows and games to familiarize yourself with the basic characters and themes. Just like go to Wikipedia before the con and be like, what
are like the 5 most popular things if you want to take pictures of the most popular things. If you don't, then don't bother. But if you're curious or you want to, then by all means check it out. And you can, like I said, play the what's going to be popular this year game, or just take photos of characters you personally know and like. That is also perfectly valid. But either way, as the photographer, you're the director. You need to give your models motivation and direction if you want to get the best out of them. They probably know their characters better than you do. They spent God knows how long making the cosplay and then putting on makeup and getting into it. And most cosplayers love talking with somebody else who loves the same characters that they do. So chat with them a little bit, help them relax. Get their mind off of the fact that they're about to take photos. Get them thinking about common jokes that people make about their characters. Get them laughing about their characters. Like, if you know funny things about the character, be like, oh, have you seen that thing on Facebook about, whoever, Mother Gothel, or have you seen that thing from Rapunzel where, or man, do you remember that time when Rapunzel did that thing with Flynn? Oh, that was so funny, etc., etc. Just get them in that headspace, because that is really conductive of better posing and happier smiles, etc. Ask them what their favorite scene is in the movie, book, TV show, etc. Ask them if they have any props that they can use. Ask them if they have any dream photos that they've always wanted to take. Something that they just really like, oh, I always wanted to get a photo of me running down the stairs, or jumping in a pool, or I don't know, high-fiving my best friend. And think about how you can make them look their best. What's going to be most flattering for them? So here's an example. I don't know if anyone here knows Slayers. It's an old classic anime. But Gowry he's famous for being really, really dumb. And so I asked this guy to pretend that he was reading the book upside down. And just looking a little bit confused, and so that's the photo I took of him. Cecil and Carlos from Welcome to Night Vale. I suggested that Carlos could be giving Cecil instructions on how to do something technical, something science-y, and to make Cecil clearly not confident in his own abilities. It's just like a back corner of the hotel's lobby area where they had some switch boxes and nobody was looking. So I was like, okay guys, back in here, there's stuff that looks technical. Let's just pretend we're doing things. Making cosplayers pretend to do things is the time-honored tradition of photography. So, this is Kanji from Persona 4. I saw him eating and I politely asked if I could snap a picture or two because the lighting was just really, really nice, where the window light was just hitting him, just perfect. And he was happy to let me take a couple of shots while he pretended to eat in character. Oh, and because this character is actually Japanese, like a Japanese teenager that lives in Japan, having him eating with chopsticks in a sort of Japanese-looking restaurant really suits the character a lot. It's sort of a really funny, authentic kind of looks like a screenshot type of thing. So, characters interacting with each other is my preferred style of photo. I think they're the most interesting. If you hadn't picked that up yet, groups interacting is one of the beautiful things about conventions. Take advantage of having so many cosplayers in one place, because when you do a private photo shoot or just hang out with one person, you obviously don't have the advantage of there being 20 people. I like to single out cosplayers that catch my eye, especially if they're in a group, like you see 5 people walking around together. Ask them if they have time to do a little mini photo shoot. If I have a location in mind already, I suggest it. If I don't, I start thinking fast and also ask them for suggestions if there's any place where they want to take photos or have been hoping to get photos taken. If we can't think of anything amazing, then I pick the least terrible option that's available. And usually in the back of my head at any convention I'm at and I'm trying to take photos, I have a running list of, well, if nothing else, I can go to X or Y or Z, and that won't be horrible. So here are more photos of Cecil and Carlos on their not a date, because Carlos is too busy doing science to notice that it's a date. And Cecil's not happy about that. But look, love perseveres. They've stopped doing science and they're going to play the piano. And so characters interacting with the camera is another good trick. If you only have one character and you want to do something to make it more interesting, it's simple but effective. The way you compose it also helps. But this primarily, you said that? So you tend to tell I tend to tell cosplayers not to look at the camera. Because when they're looking directly at the camera with their actual head, it tends to look a little bit forced or fake. Usually what I say is turn your head to one side and turn your eyeballs towards me if I want them to interact with the camera. And if it's like just a posed shot. And then of course if they're interacting with another cosplayer, then they're looking at each other and just completely ignoring the camera. It's like, don't look at me, I'm not here. Look over my head, look over that way, look somewhere else. Pretend that there is something behind me. The most interesting thing you've ever seen, it's right there. But this particular trick, to get back on topic, I wandered a little there, I apologize. This works best with characters that have a confrontational personality, looking directly at the camera trick, like this, for example. Edward Elric from Full Metal Alchemist, if you guys know him. This type of photo would not work with like a really shy character or somebody who's sort of awkward or quiet. You could get like some interesting photos with that type of character where they're looking at the camera but sort of like really nervous about it, like visibly uncomfortable. But those might not be the most appealing photos for a viewer, but they would be interesting. I would like to see somebody do that, so try it, send it to me. But these are just like dead on, I want to have a fight me. Here we have like a soldier like aiming the gun like right at the camera. So you get the idea that we just want to have this kind of interaction with the camera. So here, characters interacting with props. If they do not have props, what I like to do when I'm like, I'm going to do photography at this con, I bring props with me. Not a lot, but I bring a couple of just sort of generic things that almost anybody can use, or I bring things specifically because I know that I want to find certain types of cosplay. Like I love old school anime in games, and I love like Western animation, so I tend to bring like old tiny playing cards like they have here in this shot. I tend to bring, sometimes I bring a liquor flask, empty. But it's just like a big red metal flask that like clearly looks like an alcoholic thing. And various other things like watches, pocket watches, a little kawaii bento box. Gosh, what else do I have? I know I have other stuff, I'm just like blanking out on some of my other props. Fake cigarettes, those are really useful sometimes. Smoking is like smoking is bad, kids, don't smoke, it's bad. But smoking is like the most useful acting tool ever because it gives people something to do with their hands and it makes everybody instantly look cooler, but it's terrible for you. And so I know actors everywhere lamented when smoking went out of style because it's like, I can't use my crutch anymore. This was so useful. It made me look really good, but it's killing me. Anyway, so in this shot here, I just had these two who are friends in their series. It's like a medieval fantasy setting, and you can kind of see that there are cars outside, so it ruins the illusion a little bit. I wish I could have gotten it without the cars, but still, I think it's a pretty good shot where you almost can't tell that it's not like straight out of the series. That the two of them are sitting somewhere, maybe at an inn, and playing cards. So yeah, giving them props to play with will instantly make the photo more interesting, especially if they're alone. In this case, she had her own cigarettes, but just it makes the photo much interesting, much more interesting. Even though it's a plain background behind her, she has these like lovely intense colors on her costume. So I was like, okay, I really want to get the highlight of the flame on your glove and on your face. So can you light your cigarette for me? And I'm gonna like take 5 million shots of that until I find the one that is good. Okay, lighting. I said I'd come back to this. No light, no pictures. More light, better pictures. Conventions, crappy lighting. Solution 1, go outside. But it's hot, and there's bugs, and it's raining. It's dark outside. The outside of the convention center hotel slat is super ugly, horrible, hobo infested. I don't want to go out there. True, sometimes you can't go outside, but when you can, always go outside. It helps. Natural light is your friend. Natural light is beautiful. It makes everything look really good. This is natural light, and the reason it looks so soft and so pretty in this photo is because she is standing under these tree branches, and it is acting as a natural diffuser. And this is right underneath this convention center in the grotto that is down there. That is a fantastic place to take photos. Of course, I'm telling you guys this, so I know it's going to be swamped. Kidding. But no, please make use of it. It is sometimes can get a little bit dark, and then it's not as good. But if you go at the right times, it is wonderful. And it can double for so many different kinds of places if you place yourself in the right location. Because it basically looks a little bit like a castle dungeon. Excuse me. But you could make it look like Afghanistan, or you could make it like a desert, or you could make it look like a European castle, or you could make it look like, today, or something. Scotland. It just could be anything. This is also the exact same place, like 5 feet away, just turning around and facing the other direction. This was shot also during golden hour, which is about 5 or 6 p.m. This is a magic time to take photos outdoor because the lighting is just really nice. And the leafy greens, like I said, are acting as a natural diffuser. Opportunity lighting. Convention centers and hotels have lights built in. Use them. Sometimes they will look really cool. For example, there was a bit of floor lighting right there, and I had this girl dressed as Melfina from Outlaw Star. And Melfina is a robot, and in the series, she spends a lot of time. Technically, she's naked at those times, but I'm not going to ask the cosplayer to get naked, especially not outside. But no, never. I would never ask that. That would be creepy and rude and mean. So the point is that Melfina does like stuff on a spaceship inside of a tube of like liquid goo. The point is that like there's all sorts of like weird lighting and things, and so I was like, hey, can you stand in front of this weird air conditioning vent and have this light shining up at your face and like do her pose that she does in the tube? And she was like, yeah, okay. And I took this picture, and I think that it's a pretty cool looking picture of Melfina. And obviously it's not a spaceship, it's not, like particularly technological, but it looks really interesting of her. And it's definitely a better setting for this character than a photo of her like in the dealer's hall. Like it's more dramatic and it's more exciting. So flash photography. I don't like using flash if I can avoid it. Sometimes you have to use it, but it almost never looks good. Every photo looks like a crime scene evidence from a trial about a meth lab. So, and this is just showing you the difference between different types of flash. So no flash fill, direct flash fill, and then flash with a softbox. So what's a softbox? Without a softbox and then with a softbox. Softbox is literally a box that you put around your flash, and it diffuses the light and makes it soft.
This is a small one.
Yes, he has a softbox, the gentleman back there, and I also have a picture on here. This is a really, really big softbox that you put on big lights in a studio. But you can have little soft boxes like his and like this one that you can carry around with you. It's a flash inside a box that has a semi-opaque cover that keeps the light from being too harsh. You can buy little soft box covers for a DSLR's external flash. But you don't need to go that far even. You can do things that are cheaper and lazier because you can diffuse any light and you can diffuse anything. You can just put any kind of paper or opaque, semi-opaque, wax paper, etc. in front of your cell phone light, although that probably is not bright enough and also you're going to kill your battery. But just get like a work light that you can plug in somewhere, although convention centers may frown on this, so do that like on your own at home or something. But as you can see here, this person has rigged up lighting with a work light, and this person has done this. And you can even do this, just sort of tape a filter in front of a thing. And you can buy professional grade papers and filters to do this with, but you can also just improvise a piece of cloth that has the right properties with some trial and error. And you will definitely spend a lot less money that way, depending on if you find the right thing and it looks good to you. Just be careful because some lights will get hot and you don't want to start a fire. And of course, if you want to buy some kind of diffuser, etc., look on eBay. You may find some things that are on the less pricey end of the scale. And one thing that I do sometimes, and I will maybe mention this again later or skip it if I talk about it now and then don't need to talk about it later, is you can have a little kit with you as you go around if you know that the convention is going to be dark or whatever. And let's say you bring a small light with you, like a battery-powered LED light. And let's say it has a tripod attachment on it. So you can stick this light on a really lightweight little tripod and just sort of smack it down like right here and shine a light on any part of a cosplayer that you need because it's just a little too dark. And then you can diffuse it or not diffuse it, but the point is it's not a flash, it's a constant light, so it's not going to get that like blown out thing, but you will have just a little bit of extra light and it may save a photo. And on the extra bonus side, sometimes when you have that kind of light, you can use it for cool effects and just sort of like say, hey, can you stand here, put your feet together, I'm going to put a light behind you, and let's pretend that's magic. So sometimes cosplayers create their own light. Like this guy had a cool glowing sword, and then these guys, all of their orbs lit up. So I said, okay guys, I want you to all go light yourselves up. And then I had a Tesseract when I cosplayed Bruce Banner, and then I told this guy, hey, Star-Lord, can you hold my Tesseract? Cheaper solutions. Cell phones and tablets light up, and they can be used. Like I said, they're not ideal, and oftentimes they will not give you enough light, but sometimes they will be just enough. Like this, there's that beautiful light on her face, right? That is because she has a Kindle in that book, and that is kicking a little bit of light up into her face. I remember when I actually submitted this photo to a photography class I was taking, because it was for an assignment, and everyone was like, how did you do that on her face? I was like, it's a Kindle. So, and here is another work light, the type that you can clamp places. These are also super handy. I have taken these around as well sometimes. Just have a bag with you, stuff it in there, and then just find a spot with power where you can plug it in for the 10 seconds it takes to take a few photos, and then just move on your way. Be quiet, be polite, don't make a mess, don't damage anything. Some hotels won't like it if you start plugging in lights, even very small ones, so just be cognizant of that, and if they ask you to stop, be like, oh, I'm so sorry, I didn't realize, I'm bad, bye, and then just don't do it again while that same person is on your ship. No, it's sometimes easier to ask forgiveness than to ask permission, so just do your thing quietly and respectfully and quickly and hope nobody cares. Because mostly they don't care, and mostly you're not going to bother anybody. Battery-powered LEDs, these you can get on Amazon and eBay, I think. They're not super terribly expensive, and they are pretty handy. Literally any other inexpensive battery-powered light you can find will work. Oh, you're welcome. Did you guys have a card? Oh no, it's totally all right. You're welcome. I hope you guys enjoyed it.
Yes.
So this is basic lighting patterns. I'm not going to spend a super long time on this just because this is more like for studio photography when you have like actual legit lights set up. So as you look across this thing, it's talking about different ways that you can light your model. So starting from left to right, the flat lighting is, I've forgotten the name. Like I know most of the names because flat lighting I almost never use. So it's like, yeah, flat lighting is basically very similar to using a flash because it's the entire face illuminated. Everything is essentially the same level of lightness. This does not provide a lot of definition to the face, and it's sort of dull. You can't determine the depth of the facial features or identify too well, like where their nose is or where anything is. Now, if somebody is cosplaying an anime character that like has super smooth like face and barely any nose, then you might want to find flat lighting where they can totally minimize all of their facial features and they just vanish into their face. But the next one, butterfly or paramount lighting, that is also called beauty lighting, and that is what was used in old-timey films. They would literally put the light as close to directly above and slightly to the front as possible in order to create, as you can see, there's a tiny little shadow right under her nose and a tiny little shadow right under her lip, but there's no other unflattering shadows on her face. And that was used almost exclusively on the Hollywood starlets to make them look as beautiful as possible. And they would use totally different lighting for the men because they didn't want to have that exact same effect for them. The women, though, they wanted to have like dainty little noses and dainty little lips and to not have big shadows on their face. The loop lighting is when you move the light slightly to one side from something like the Paramount light. And the Paramount is called the Paramount because Paramount Studios. But so the loop is this little P shape that's coming off from one side of the nose. And that is very similar to the way that in anime they shade one side of the nose to indicate that the nose is sticking out, instead of drawing a nose. So that might be useful if you want to really get that anime lighting effect. And then you have the Rembrandt, which is very similar to the way Rembrandt liked to light a lot of his portraits. And that is basically when one side of the face is mostly in shadow, but except for a triangle of light under the one eye. And then finally you have the split, which is like roughly you have a 50-50, one side of the face is dark and the other side of the face is light. And the light comes directly from 90 degrees to the right or the left of the subject's face. So these are just all useful things to know, that these are options and that there are ways to get these kinds of lighting effects. And all it is a matter of like, where do I hold this light, or can I get a willing victim to take this light bulb from me and hold it in different spots, and I can cast shadows on my cosplayer's face and make them look really, really cool. So here is just more photos of like the exact same thing, but you can see how dramatic that these effects can be. And you can do these with any light. You could even have, if it's a close-up, you could even have the cosplayer hold the light. So how much kit should I carry? Whatever you need most will always be what you don't have. If you plan a photo shoot, like you and some cosplayers are like, okay, we're gonna meet at this park and we're gonna be there for like 5 hours and take photos until we drop dead. Bring whatever you can manage. Like just bring a suitcase and just drag it around with you and unpack somewhere, or put your car as close as you can and just know that you're gonna be running back and forth and doing that. And then that way you won't have to go, no, I left behind my golden whatever. But for just walking around, try not to load yourself down at a convention. Carry essentials, and this varies based on what you already have and also on what your goals are. Like, what type of photos do you want to take, and what are you interested in taking photos of, like which cosplays. So, processing your photos. What does that mean? Okay. DSLRs and other high-end cameras can take photos in an uncompressed format called RAW. You can also process JPEGs if you want to like do fancy effects. Okay, thank you. So let me speed this up. So you can save bad photos more easily if they're in RAW format, because RAW format can be manipulated more than JPEGs can. But RAWs take up more room, and manipulating RAWs takes time, and sometimes is a big pain in the butt. But it does make them look better. You can see that on the left is the before, and on the right is the after. And there's not major changes there, but I did tweak it a little. And what I'm doing in post is raising the exposure on her face and parts of her clothes while darkening the background, so making her pop out of the background a little bit more. And these are things that if I had a full lighting kit and like 20 servants to carry everything around for me and set everything up constantly, then I would do it in real life and not do it in post, but I don't, and I'm not that rich. But if you could do it in camera, but yeah, you would need to add lights and equipment, and so most people just do it in post. It's a lose-lose situation in that case. Before and after. What is Lightroom? Lightroom is Adobe Systems program for editing photos. Like Adobe makes Photoshop and various other programs you may have heard of. Lightroom is just the other one that's attached to that. It is $9.99 a month for the Photoshop Lightroom bundle. I think it's $150 or something to buy the last gen version of Lightroom by itself, just to keep forever and cherish. It works pretty well. It's like the industry standard, but there are other options and things that you can use even for free. And yeah, you do not have to process your images. You can definitely get away with just taking JPEGs if you want to. And in Photoshop, you can do other stuff. You can remove minor blemishes, like if some cosplayer had like a giant zit somewhere, you can just take that out. Or if there was like an electrical socket on the wall that's like totally throwing off the symmetry of the picture, or there's a wire on the thing, I could take that wire out, no problem, and just make it nice and seamless. So anyway, these are just some examples I'm going to show you guys, because we're basically at the end, I think. So can you tell which ones were shot at conventions and which ones were location shoots? Because I've done a lot of really fun location shoots in California, mostly in California. Well, you're going to know some of these because I've already told you that they were at conventions in hotels, so no cheating. So this one, what do you guys think? Is this a convention center, or is this like some place that I went to?
This looks like a shoot.
No, that's here. That's here in the grotto underneath, because there was no water in the creek. So is this a convention center or a photo shoot? That's a photo shoot. That was at the beach in San Francisco. Yeah, that was at the same beach. Yeah, same beach. Yes. This one's a trick question because it is, yes, a photo shoot, and yes, it is at the same beach, but I photoshopped the temple in because that was not actually there. But the sky was perfectly white, like there was nothing there. And I was like, okay, this is gonna be a really easy job of replacing. And then I found a great photo of a Greek temple where the colors just perfectly matched these ruins. And I was like, well, you're going in here. It's a convention center. Well, it's across the street from a convention center. Yep, it's across the street. Yes, those are those shipping crates I mentioned. But anyway, so that's it. If anyone has any questions, I would be delighted to answer them. Please take a card if you would like. And if you want to look me up online, you can email me after the panel. My email isn't on the cards, but my website, my Facebook is on there. And like I said, I'm Katiko Creations on Facebook, Tumblr, etc. And follow me if you enjoyed the presentation and want to see more educational content, and let the convention know if you enjoyed it and you want more panels like this, because I love teaching people stuff, and I would be very happy to do it more. So, let the convention know, because then they'll invite me. They'll be like, hey, you should come back and teach a class. And that's my website. You can even